108. 108. Okay. Not today. I'm already late because of you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mario DePietro. I'm a city planner / city engineer. And today we are going to do a second part of the workshop for the zoning ordinance for the city of Easley. The first half we did was about 106 pages. We went through densities that were changing. We went through a couple other things, how we're going to revitalize this. I think the biggest one we're looking at right now is densities. And so right now we're going to come up to, I believe it's signs now. All right, page 108. So published signs. So we went through this. And most of it makes sense. And then how to get the signs. I'm looking at this, and one of the things we're looking at is what happens with signs. And one of the things we do better than most people is we pick up signs. There's a lot of signs out there. People just post them, throw them anywhere they want, put them in the right of way. And then when you go out and start looking around, you're in the county, and all you see is signs everywhere in intersections. We have Paula goes and picks up our signs. If anyone sees a sign, you can pick it up, other than realtor signs. But we're trying to figure out how to stop people to do that. And typically, the best way to stop someone is to charge them. But it's very difficult to find someone who has the sign and trying to figure it out. So that's one of the things I'm looking at with this red number 4 right here, is can we pick up signs that are not removed? We pick them up, and even realtors, they leave their signs up for a long time too. And see that. This probably gets striked out, but this is one of the things I was thinking about. Same thing, signs. I think we're pretty good with signs. Our signs aren't obtrusive.
On the signs?
Yeah.
On the directional sign for the existing listing?
You have, the realtor can have 2 signs. One sign showing, one sign in front, right? Paula?
One sign
Yes.
directional?
Well, it's supposed to be on the two ends of the road, if there's both 2 entrances.
Okay. And they can stay during the duration of the listing?
During the process, right?
Until it expires or something?
Right, and then what I would like to do is like to have the signs picked up. Typically, the little signs, not the brought up someone, I was driving down Olive Street about 3 months ago, and I looked, and there was a sign there. I forget the subdivision name, and I called, and the guy had been out of business probably 10 years. So we went and took the sign down. It was one of those big plywood signs. It's there. I mean, and you want to keep the city at least a little decent to look at. Ultimately, we want more trees, one less signs. Anything else? You can interrupt. Now, the people who this are providing input right now are the City Council, Planning Commission, and Zoning Board of Appeals. Unfortunately, right now, the public cannot talk. You'll have the opportunity, I think, in about a month or so, once we finalize this draft and get it to City Council for one more review, and then we'll have an open forum for that, and that will be posted online.
Mario, I'm sorry, can you make that a little bit bigger?
No. Yes, I can. I'm having trouble reading this, so yeah, I can. Just, I would try, yeah.
Thank you.
That better? Let me close this out.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay? Anytime. So we talk about signs and how to take care of signs and get them down. So it's, like I said, it's a little picky, but, so, actually, I was saying, we do have good sign ordinance. The height, the top sign can be 15 foot. It's predicated upon the facade of the building. I think it's predicated upon frontage too. Paul takes care of the signs. And we try to keep the signs to a minimum. Nowadays, it's a lot easier because people have a tendency to use search in Google and find out where it is, and they can get there. So signs are becoming less prevalent than before, but still, even Lowe's, Home Depot, they want their signs up there. McDonald's, they want their signs. For most people who don't know where they are. The signs are boring, but they need to be addressed. Signs in residential, I'm not really touching any of this. I think we do a pretty good job with that. And so I just left that to be. I mean, people can read it and find out. Again, signs permitted in non-residential, so. In central business district, which is basically downtown. Now, I was talking with, about the Architecture Review Board, which I don't think we have one that's really relevant. And that's one of my charges to city councils to be, do we want an Architecture Review Board? Not just for downtown, but maybe other core areas. There was a TIF district, right, there was an Architecture Review Board. There was one in the TIF district. I don't know if it's still in process or not. I think there's very little about it. It's a question that a lot of people ask is, how do you know what it looks like? How do you know what you want to do? Right now, I use my best, this is for anything that's coming in conditional use, I use my best judgment, which is not the greatest you want to use. You probably want to have someone with a little bit better taste than me.
Well, I will add, just for everybody to know, it took us 10 years to lower the signs to 15 feet.
Right. It did. It took a while.
And we still have people at the end begging not to have to lower.
Right. But you know what? No one's complaining now. It's a matter of them understanding it makes sense.
Paul worked herself to a frazzle doing that.
Again, signs are something we have to look at and try to figure out how to not maintain them, but how to enforce them. This is how you calculate the signs. Like I said, it's kind of boring. Application process. Buffer yards. Now, this is where we can start getting a little more meat. Anytime you develop a piece of property that's in a commercial zone or a dense residential zone, you have to buffer it. Our buffer requirements are actually I think they're pretty strict. What I want to do is look at them and try to use more expertise from a landscape designer or a landscape architect. Right now, anybody can do a design. I've done many designs for buffer yards, landscaping. And I just look at the regulations that we have and try to say, hey, this is what they need, this is what I'm gonna put in there. By the time I'm done, I have so many trees and shrubs and bushes out there that it's becoming to look like a jungle. And this is my fault, I don't anticipate the growth and how these things are gonna grow. So what I want to do is say, okay, listen, you can do this, or you can hire a landscape architect that's gonna come back with a better plan than the city can come up with. I wanna use more green space, more green trees, simply because they just provide a better buffer. We have to look at the fence location. Right now, the fence location is kind of convoluted. It really doesn't tell you exactly what you gotta do with a fence or a wall. Typically, if you see it, the fence is on the outside and all the buffer is on the inside. So the only person getting a buffer is the person on the inside. So I want to change that to probably put the fence or wall in the middle of that buffer, which is buffered on both sides now, if we're going to do a wall. The more buffer yard you have, the wider the buffer yard you have, the less plantings you need. So if you have a 30-foot buffer, you need less plantings than a 10-foot buffer. 10-foot buffer becomes really dense. Now, saying that's when I started looking at it and go, this has become, just gonna become a jungle. So I looked at that and it has a bunch of definitions and where you need them. And like I said, most of it's pretty good. What I really looking at with this is how do I get a better landscape plan? And that's where I want to go to using a professional to do it instead of an engineer. Engineers know how to read it, but they don't understand the overall ramifications of it.
Do you want to put that into the LDRs as well as this?
Yeah, well, ultimately, my goal is, and it's not as easy as it sounds, because you have to deal with a lot of different people. My goal is to have planting strips on the major commercial arteries. In front, basically, what I want to do is I want to have at least a 6 foot, and that's what's predicated in here right now, is a 6 foot planting strip along 123, along 93, along anywhere you see a commercial development. Now, you got problems because, like, I'll give you an example, on Highway 8, you got some parking lots that are right to the property line. So to go in there and say, I want a 6 foot strip, you're gonna take away 15, 20 spaces sometimes. And that's when people get upset when they lose their parking spaces. So it has to be you have to try to do the best you can with what you have right now. Now, I lived here since '89. 123 has changed, but not significantly. If you look at it, it's basically about the same. You got some new buildings, but the plantings, the landscaping has not, where you come through and you go, man, this looks nice. People still driving through, they take 123 and they just look at it and go, just keep on going. You know, they don't have that fuzzy feeling driving through easily, lack of a better word. So that's one of the things I'm trying to look at. Now, the new ones coming in, it's easy enough to do. You say, here it is, here's what you need to do, and put it in that way. So, like I said, landscaping, I think we have a good plan for new stuff. We need to have a better plan for the old stuff that we can make people change. Again,
I don't see any red in the draft, so.
the reds, I haven't changed this.
You haven't changed it.
No, I haven't touched this at all, the
Okay.
buffers. The only place I changed is a little bit further on down in the buffer. The only thing I thought about doing was actually, and it doesn't make sense, counterintuitive than what you want to do. You want a higher buffer, but I think the buffer is too strict right now. Especially with the 5s and 6s, which you'll see that a little later on. I just think they're just too strict and just that it's like the density being too loose. Our density was way too high. I mean, you're looking at 7 units per acre in some places that I'm bringing down at 3. I mean, now you're looking at something that says, okay, this is nice, but I think it's too strict. I want to bring it down to a little less strict, where we have someone who has some expertise in how to plant and how to anticipate growth of the plants. That's what go ahead.
So I guess the question, and no, all sounds reasonable, but, is that gonna be modified before?
Yes, it's down here. It's the buffer, the buffer's down lower.
Okay.
And I'll show that, yeah. This is basically technical, what kind of buffer, how to do it. It doesn't really get into the details yet. The details come down further. This is actually interior landscaping. You know, now, a lot of people don't understand this, but, and I guess we pulled it out of Greenville, South Carolina Land Management. When you put a parking lot in, and this is really not a great example, because as you want interior landscaping, right? You have that interior landscaping, which is nice. They don't show the exterior, but I think this is just for the interior right here. But you want to have landscaping around the whole thing, building. So I want to have landscaping that makes sense. You can't put, you want to be able to see by the landscaping. When you're driving into a parking lot, you want to be able to see around corners. So you have to be real careful on how you do this also. But that's why I'm saying that someone who has a design capability would be better than me doing it. And that's what I want to get to. I want to get to a point where we can bring in some experts to design it instead of me looking at it and saying, hey, that looks right. So that's my ultimate goal with the buffers and landscaping. But again, it doesn't really get down to a little bit further on down. Again, we talked about, this is street trees. I want to have a street tree in front of every new house going on. Now, street trees, a lot of different examples, and that's one of the things that we have to look at the vegetation choice, and we do have that in section 5, how to get the diversity, equality. You don't want to keep the same tree everywhere. You know, a couple years back it was red tips, then about 5 years ago it was Leyland cypresses. You know, it's the choice tree for a little while, and then you realize we made a mistake by just having too many of these. And we're still doing it in some places. I just have to have I think someone likes to say it has more natural tree, a tree that is more native. Again, they're not the prettiest trees. We have have a lot of pretty ornamental trees that are not native, and people like to use those. Bradford Pierce, for example, those are beautiful trees, right?
Mario,
Ma'am.
placement of the street trees, are you looking to place them within the curb lawn or
In-
behind the sidewalk?
Behind the sidewalk, on their property. I want the trees, and that's what you have to watch out for there, is if I put the trees behind the property line, which I don't want many trees in the right of way, because that becomes another problem also. But you have to see how you can continue to enforce that. If Brian's a tree lover and I'm not a tree lover, and I get my tree planted in my front yard to meet the ordinance when it's being built, and Brian looks over, and next thing you know, I'm out there with a chainsaw cutting it down. He's like, you can't do that. I'm gonna say, make me stop. You know, so it's a difficult thing to try to make sure that you can maintain the enforcement.
But I'm reminded of the issue that we had in Greenville in the mill villages, where the mill planted the oak trees
Right,
in the curb lawn.
Right.
And the oak trees overgrew and broke up the sidewalk, broke up the street. The limbs were on the
Right.
houses, and that curb lawn belonged to the county.
right,
And
yep.
they wanted the residents, rightly or wrongly, wanted us to trim the trees off of their houses. And we ultimately had to cut the trees down.
I'm looking to try to get some sort of, and I'll need help with this, I'll try to get some sort of guidance and saying, okay, if you plant a tree, plant it within 5 feet of the property line, plant it within 15 feet of another tree. You know, just simple guidelines like that I can put into a guidance form, not in the zoning book, but, you know, refer to guidance and have that guidance online. When to plant a tree. I love using this one. When's the best time to plant a tree? You know,
Last week,
well, no, 20 years ago. But, you know, so it's the old, you know, so you try to tell it, now's the time to do it. You want a tree, now's the time to do it. Now, you have to make sure you don't plant it too close to sidewalks, you don't plant it too close to water lines, you don't plant it too close to your house. So you gotta be careful, and then you gotta figure out how big that tree is gonna get. So there's so many things to look at. And teaching that is gonna be difficult, because everyone's a landscaper. So easy to do.
I think that's where an arborist comes in,
Yeah.
or a landscape architect.
Right.
And I think that you're right, if we're going to move toward having a landscape plan provided to us by a landscape architect.
Well, I mean, just the type of how to plant, we have how to plant a tree in here, but, and we do have spacing in here, but, you know, you gotta make sure, people don't think about next to a driveway. You put a tree next to a driveway, you're gonna start breaking that driveway up with time, because the root system grows. But I do want more street trees. I wanna see how we can do that. Maybe have a plant a tree week, or a plant a tree, you know, month, something like that, where everyone goes out and plants the trees. I have a lot of,
Aware
go ahead.
that Clemson will provide you a free tree if you're replacing a Bradford Fair.
I'm not aware of that. Yeah. What kind of tree they give you?
Flower and fruit tree.
All right. As long as it's not a Leyland cypress, right? That's good to know. And that's something that we can advertise. we have to improve our website, and so we can look at doing that. Again, about fences, you know, where to put the fences up and stuff like that. Here's one problem we're having everywhere in Easley. People don't understand it. People are planting in easements. And that sounds nice because they own the land, but they don't own the easement. And the biggest problem we're having is people are planting in drainage ways. So now you have a swale running through the back of your property on the side, and you put a tree in the middle of it, it's defeating the purpose of what it was there for. And I understand. I understand why they want it, but at the same time, it could cause other problems down the road. And we've seen it. We've seen it happen already. Here's one where we talk about saving wooded areas. And we don't do a good job of this. And it's real difficult to do a good job of this simply because people want to build the simplest way, which is mass grading. So that's why one of the things in the new ordinance, going back to one of the zones, RPH 6, is that I'm looking to see if we can keep trees, open space, green space, buffers. Now, in some situations, you can't, the homeowner, the landowner, goes ahead and clear cuts it anyway. So now you're going in there saying, I want open space, I want buffer, and there's nothing there. So I want to see if we can't make them plant, and, well, we make them plant in the buffer. And like I said, I'm not a proponent on telling what to do, but I'm a big fan of evergreens, and I think evergreens ultimately will provide the best product overall for screening, for pollution, for air. I mean, just air in general, it gives the best oxygen back. This is one where you can use trees that are existing in your buffer. And you get credits. Something we really haven't got into too much. I haven't seen too much. Something we're looking into.
In order to claim that credit, you're gonna have to have a tree survey done.
Right, yeah.
Do that,
And
unless we tell them.
and most of those are gonna be in the buffer anyway.
Okay, I'm trying to understand too, something. When you just mentioned you don't want to be telling somebody what to do with their property, but if the property owner and the developer is coming to the city and proposing a plan, then, I mean, and if we have those zoning ordinances in place, for instance, buffers, which you
Right.
kind of detailed,
I'm talking
in
about,
order to get the approval before any of this is approved, that they would have to understand that before they clear cut the property, correct, or not?
I can't stop them from clear cutting their property. And that's just, a lot of it's, I hate to use the word farming. You know, they're logging their land in
No,
there.
I understand that part, but if part of the development and our zoning ordinances, and I'm just trying to understand the process.
Right.
I'm not trying to be controversial with you, but if the ordinances or land development, whatever, we have in place, stipulates that a developer, if they're gonna build a tent city, I don't know, but they're gonna put something there on this property, they have to get the approval of the city to proceed. Part of that approval would include, okay, you have to make sure that there is a buffer. And so the zoning administrator or designee, whoever that is, holds that developer responsible, because when we agreed to this plan, you agreed to these ordinances which details X, Y, Z.
But what happens in reality is that I own a piece of property, I die. My kids go in there and say, I want money off this property. Well, they're getting $2,000 or $3,000 an acre for pine, say. Okay, I'm not sure. I own 100 acres. They look at the money and they go, I'm taking the money.
I
And so that's done, and then they go, you know what? Let's sell the land. And so now, in the city, you don't see too much in the city, you see a lot in the county. Then, here I am sitting here going, well, you just ruined your land before you sold it. To me, that's what they're doing. But to them, they're making $300,000, they're going, I don't care.
No, and I.
Yeah, but
So-
taking a step further, I think is what you're saying, Denise. Okay, then a developer buys it,
Right.
wants to build, then they're
Then-
required,
then-
in your
right.
proposal, they would be required to follow these guidelines.
Correct.
They'd have to be replanted.
And they would plant then, they would
They'd have
plant
to be
instead of,
replanted.
yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, but what it comes back to, and I brought this up last time, the zoning administrator designee, whoever that person is, it's the city's responsibility that when that plan is approved, that Joe Schmo, the developer who built the tent city, if you go out there and the buffer's not in place as dictated by the ordinance, then that person doesn't get a CO until.
Well, yeah, we can make them put we'll make them put the buffer in, I'm sorry.
Well, that's what
Yeah,
the-
yeah, 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 yeah,
Now,
yeah.
also,
Even though we were talking.
Yeah, no, well, I'm talking about before.
well, and like I think Denise is too, is like when it starts at grading. I mean, when they start grading the land, if you're wanting to preserve the older trees or what's there.
I think ultimately, while older
Yeah,
trees are
that's
nice,
right, if you get there on time.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what Pat said
Yeah.
about if there's a tree survey,
Yeah.
so if there's
well,
a tree
if they're,
survey,
yeah,
if there's a tree survey that's part of the plan, and you have these massive oaks there, and then they take them out,
I-
and, I mean, obviously, you cannot go plant a 50-year-old tree there,
Right.
I-
but, they need to do something in place of that, but it
Right.
comes back to
if,
that bold underlying.
in Greenville, if you have say you have a 48-inch tree, you get, say, 8 credits for it, okay? So if you tear it down, you gotta put 8 more credits in there, okay? It's probably more than that. Now, it's not controversial, but what I like to say is that the 48-inch tree is old. So when you have a 48-inch tree, if you're gonna work around it, you may kill it. So what you gotta be careful of is when that tree is there, if you wanna save it, you gotta save a lot of land around it. So the developer or homeowner is gonna say, I don't want that 48-inch tree there because I'm afraid it's gonna fall on my house or afraid it's gonna die when I start building. So what would make them do is say, go ahead, you cut it down, but we're gonna have you put more trees around it, and more trees in that area.
And all that's fine, as
Right.
long as whatever the stipulation is, what, what Paul and what Ryan is saying is,
Yeah, and,
this is what the rule is, that
and the buffer for me, depends on the width, of course. I wanna see evergreens there. As much as a beautiful oak is a beautiful oak, the evergreen is just a better tree for society. For breathability, let's say, for environmental. That's my take on it. And it's cheaper also. I mean, you can, and they grow fast. So, but it's something that, it's the way we're gonna start looking at it. We haven't been looking at it in the past. So this is when you're talking about trying to get people through landscape meetings and stuff like that. You gotta make sure you have the accessibility for physically disabled. So when you have walkways and buffer yards and planting strips, you gotta make sure people can get through there. Even us, I mean, even a regular person, I hate to use that word. See, again, we're talking about who has to put it in there, how high it is, what kind of fence you gotta use, what kind of material you gotta use. Typically, when you put in landscaping, it has to be 6 feet at 3 years. So you wanna either put in a big tree or a fast-growing tree. And typically, most people put in the smaller tree, less money, but they grow faster. Ma'am?
One word, under compliance, a bond, irrevocable letter of credit or other financial security
Where are you? Right here?
breakdown
Yeah,
based
A letter.
irrevocable standby letter of credit or
Other financial security.
Oh.
ex post. amount.
We've had people, before they planted, to give us a landscape bond,
And it should be in the amount of.
a landscape,
Yeah, you've got $125.
a landscape check, yeah.
So that's okay. But bonds, horrible, horrible results with those.
I think bond is typically used interchangeably with letter of credit a lot of times, so,
I know, but it doesn't work out that way.
yeah.
It didn't in 2009. Let me stop there.
So here's another thing we have to try to do. And try to figure out how we're gonna get this, how are we going to handle the violation of an ordinance? I mean, if people don't maintain it, and I'll give you an example. I was driving by Ingalls on 123, and I noticed that all the Leyland cypresses are falling down. So this was a couple of years ago, so this is before I started working. I called Tommy and said, Tommy, all the trees are falling down. So he made a phone call, and they came back up and put like eight, still Leyland cypresses, we put 8 more up. So, but to watch that every day, to make sure people are doing that, and make sure they do it in a timely manner. Like I said, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the best time to plant a tree is not in
After that.
well, yeah, when it falls over, right? And people don't understand that. They should be trying to look at it, but people are busy. You know, they got houses, they try to take care of their commercial properties. But a lot of times a tree may die in July, and you don't want to put a tree back in July. So you have to figure out how to give them that grace to do it when it's appropriate time to do it, because it'd be killing tree after tree after tree if they go in the wrong time of year. So, but that's something we have to look at. Of course, it's a matter of driving down the road and looking at it. That's why sometimes it's nice to have a lot of different people trained on that.
Are we allowing sycamores?
I have no idea.
Well, the gumball, St. Francis got its pants sued off because gumballs were in the parking lot, and a lady
No.
stepped on and fell and broke her leg, and it cost them, close to $1 million. And that was before I retired, which was 13 years.
Probably 100 million now.
And they don't have any more sycamores.
No sycamore trees. No, I haven't seen any sycamore tree. Doesn't mean person can't put it in. But we know the city won't put it in, but doesn't mean you can't put it in. So this is where,
Working on a sterilization program for sycamore, where they don't have the bomb.
how about, is that the sweet gum too?
Do what?
The sweet gum too? No, seriously, the sweet gum tree is in my backyard. 2 different trees, right?
Anything that comes out with a gumball shape,
Is considered a sycamore?
well, I am not an arborist. What I worry about is what ends up
On the ground, yeah. Yeah, I have
in the parking lot.
one too many sweet gums. This is where I come in. I start looking at everything you need to do with the plan submission. This is why I was hired, to start looking at these and trying to make sure that they make sense. If you see this right here, this is something I'm talking about right here. I forget what VUA stands for exactly, but they say use a landscape architect to design it, to understand everything. But that's a 30,000 square foot building, I believe, so I want to bring that down a little bit. I'm not sure what number I'm going to bring that down to. Because I think it's better to have a landscape architect look at it than an engineer or landscape designer. Some of them are good, but most of them as good as engineers. landscape plan. It's very, I mean, this is probably the biggest thing about our, it's one of the biggest things is the landscaping. Here's how you plant the tree, here's how you plant the shrub. And this is where we talked about the buffers. I'm leaving most of them, changing this one here, a little more dense. You can see right there, so I went from a 1 to a 2 and a 2 to a 3. And I took this 6 and made it to a 5, and this 6 and made it to a 5. A 5 is, basically 6 is way too stringent. Walls, block walls. So we'll see 6 in a minute, but I did lessen these up a little bit, the number per 100 feet. So before we were doing 14 tree units per 100 feet. So you have canopy trees, which is, of course, the big trees. The understory trees, consider those like dogwood trees is great. Evergreen conifers, those are the smaller shrubs and the smaller plantings, and then the shrubs. It was just, to me, it seemed like a lot. Now, I also made the last one 6 foot instead of 5 foot. So if you go into, and typically you'll see probably about 10 to 20 feet buffers, you'll see the number you can use actually gets reduced. So instead of having to plant 100%, 11 trees, you're planting 50%, you're planting 6.5. Per 100 feet, that's still a pretty good amount. Same thing with the next one. I just lowered them just a little bit. Still, you get 22 trees and a 10 foot wide. I just think they eat each other up. The higher the buffer yard, the more dense you're going to have. So right here, you're looking at 29 total units and a 15 foot wide, 100 foot, and with a fence. And they don't really tell you where to put the fence. So I'm gonna clean this up. This is, and put a fence right down the middle of this. When every time you have to use a structure, B1, B3, F3. B1 is a berm, B3 is a berm, probably a little bit higher, and F3 is a fence, 6 foot high wooden stockade fence. Same with the next one. It gets really dense, and just want to reduce the density a little bit. Got to double check the numbers here. Yeah.
Page 136, so I'm following you.
Yeah.
Or either one, where you check on 135 or 136, so if, let's just,
Yeah.
take 136 is fine. So if you're, just so I can make sure I'm following you, you have 22 trees.
Right. No, 22 plantings.
22 plantings.
Yeah.
All right, 22 plantings. So,
That's per 100 foot.
yeah.
Every 100 foot, you have 22 plantings.
Okay. So when I'm looking in that chart, scroll it up just a little more.
Down or up?
Up.
Or the other way up?
That last box, I'm looking at the 100%.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, I should have told you that. Anyway, so in that one area, you're gonna have 22 plantings,
Plantings within 100,
10 feet?
10 foot, 100 foot wide. 10 foot wide, 100 foot long.
Okay.
So on 1,000 square feet, you're gonna have 22 plantings. And to top it off, you're gonna have 3 canopy trees.
Well, I guess the question is, I'm not an arborist, but, will all that work in that?
That's why I want a landscape architect. This is where I want the landscape architect to come and say, Myra, that's crazy stuff.
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
but as long as you have somebody that knows what they're talking about when it
Yeah.
comes to planning.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with that, but I'm just thinking that, if you put too much in one area.
That's what I'm worried about, yeah. If I have 200 foot and I have 44 plantings in there, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. In 5 years, you're gonna go, it's a mess. It just doesn't look
Just like the
good at
trees
all.
that Patty was talking about in Greenville, after so many years, I mean, you just wanna make sure that the plantings that we're putting in that
Ultimately, what I want to see, and when you have a high density and a low density right next to it, and it happens, is I wanna see a berm with the fence in the middle of the berm is in the middle of the buffer, and plantings on both sides. That's what I wanna see. And I just think ultimately it's gonna be the best for both sides.
Mario, are you suggesting that individual developers or property owners will hire a landscape architect, or the city will hire one to consult on this?
I want them to hire someone to consult on this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be more costly, but I think overall it's gonna give them, they give them a better project, cause say a landscape architect comes in and says, yeah, you can do what the city says to do, but it's gonna cost you $15,000 or $25,000. I can get the same thing. I can do a nice buffer for $5,000 and you can get the best value. I wanna rely on experts to tell me. I don't want me to tell someone what to do, because that's not my expertise. I want the expert to come in and say, here's what you need to do. Now, on plantings, everything else I'm an expert on.
Haven't seen anything on irrigation within these areas.
I think there's something further on down, again, if you do the right plantings, you don't need irrigation. If you can go native plantings, you'll be perfect, yeah. But the one thing I wanna see about irrigation is, I wanna make sure people don't turn those things into the street.
That's what I was gonna bring up on irrigation.
Yeah. Well, I think that's I don't think there's something that's written, but I think it's a nuisance. And so you can,
Especially when the line breaks in the middle of the winter.
well, exactly, yeah, because I don't know why people have the irrigation on in the middle of winter, but they do. So that's what I want to do with buffer yards. That's where I ultimately want. I want the buffer yard to be something that's gonna last a long time. The fence is gonna last a long time. Doesn't get overgrown.
If somebody hires a landscape architect, is that like a conditional thing run through the zoning administrator?
It'd be part of the plans. So the landscape architect would actually create his own plan, and that would be approved by staff, which includes a bunch of different people.
So it wouldn't be automatically approved just because it was done by a licensed landscape architect?
No, I think we still look at it, right? We still look at it, yeah. Yes, sir.
Any service industry person is
Correct, right.
only barely better than their client is.
Exactly, yes, sir. Yeah, well, exactly right, exactly right.
You also said, Mario, that you have, the city would, you would retain an architect, landscape architect.
No, well, just to give us,
Review this.
to review
and
the,
give guidance.
right, to review this.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can have somebody on call, we can have
Yeah,
somebody
and there's a bunch that live in the city, and,
Okay, that's
so, yeah, so I wouldn't have a problem. And then, then we start talking about structures, a 3-foot high fence or a 4-foot high fence, between properties, why you wanna go 3 foot or 4 foot, if you're gonna have a privacy fence? So I just say, get rid of 3 and 4 and just leave it 6. Excuse me. Same with a wall. You're not gonna see too many people building walls, because they are so expensive nowadays. But at the same time, 6-foot high is probably is just as good. Here's what I was talking about with the fences and berms. So you have a berm right here, so it's 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot high. Typically, you see a 3-foot high berm. You don't see too many going higher than that. Simply because, well, it takes a lot of dirt. So you have to have a lot of dirt to build that. This is my ultimate goal right here, is something that looks like this here. A 3-foot high berm, well, I haven't changed this, with a 6-foot high fence. I think that's ultimately the best thing that's gonna happen. With the fence being in the middle of the berm, and vegetation on both sides. So that's my, again, that's my idea. If someone, if we don't want to do that, then we don't have to do that. I mean, it's a question of, a consensus. I already took the 4 and 5 foot out, 4 and 5 foot fence out, so you want to go, I think this all should be 6 right here. Again, additional screening. This right here is a dumpster fence. Typically, what? Oh, I wrote that, I didn't do that, I can't blame me on that.
It's been like that for, let's see, since 15?
Yes. This is what you want to see right here. You want to see a fence with plantings around it. This right here is probably, you'll never see this. What happens when you do something like this, you trap a lot of stuff in there. You'll see something like this happening pretty good. Excuse me. I didn't touch this at all. It's something I can look into a little deeper, but basically administration enforcement appeals, I'm not changing that. I may change this to zoning officer, and the building official can be the zoning officer. And then, because right now, previously the building official was the zoning officer, so, and that could happen again shortly, or depends on how long you want to give me. Again, I didn't get too detailed into this. I think everything works fine. This is more legalistic, and I don't want to change the legalistic aspects of this. So, and some of this, it will stay building official.
Mario, I had asked you about the 4 criteria on the variances, and it's in here, powers and duties of boards.
Right here?
So it's there.
Right. Oh, you're gonna ask me, you gonna ask me a question, or did you, oh, you got it.
I'm quite content now that
Oh,
I see it.
okay, all right, yeah.
I apologize for not having come.
Again, we have a couple of Board of Appeals people here, and just to let you know, the decision of the Board of Appeals, and right now we have 5 members, so. Gonna change all that. So we'll go through the Board of Appeals for the whole thing. Again, that's very legalistic, and I didn't want to step too much into that one. And then if it does have to go, if the Board of Appeals, y'all make a ruling, that can go to a court. It's a legalistic kind of thing, right? This is one question, it's quasi-judicial, right? This is one thing that I really want to bring up to the City Council. Do you want an architectural review board or not? It's your call. It's something you have to look at and figure out what you want to do. Again, well, I didn't see that. Do we want to have one? Because right now, I don't think we do. If we do, it's very hidden.
We did when the downtown TIF.
Right, we did, yeah. But my job is to ask you. I'm not going to mandate something that I have to watch over, and y'all don't want.
If we establish overlay districts, like the historic overlay district.
We do have some.
Then we would, I assume, need to have an architectural review board if somebody came in and wanted to substantially change.
Well, what really kicked that up was, is the building that is next to the old hotel. When they built that building, a lot of people didn't like it. So they said, you know what, we're gonna start a downtown architectural review board. But that's just downtown. Should we have one for anywhere else? Should we have one for 123? Should we have one for, you know, you can mandate landscaping, you can mandate parking, and you can mandate other things, but can you mandate a McDonald's look? You know, can you say, nah, I don't like the McDonald's and not have it built?
You can, but do we really want to create something that's the arbiter of good taste? That's kind of, you're getting in a little deep.
It is, I mean, you look at, someone trying to try to compare us to Hilton Head, say we should be more like Hilton Head. But, you know, they have a ton of architectural things to consider. Sign heights are what, 4 foot high? I mean, they're short. In the Walmarts have to be certain colors, stuff like that. So, do we want to get in the middle of all that? I like to mandate more vegetation than
You can
look.
also mandate ventilations within a building, you can do all sorts of things. We're
Right.
just doing that downtown. But when you do that, you're going to have to find boards, you're going to have to first write your criteria,
And
then have a board to apply.
And there's another reason why we don't have that board, is probably because no one wants to serve on it. I mean, you know, people go, oh, we should have the board, but once you serve on it, you understand the ramifications of what you're going through. Same with the planning and zoning board of appeals. And we had a meeting earlier, it gets emotional and personal, and, which is okay, I mean, but it does take a toll on you up here, listening to people saying, don't let them do this. And you know, they're pulling at your heartstrings, and, you know, sometimes it's an easy decision, sometimes it's a very difficult decision. Because you could,
I've heard over in the county that they want to eliminate slabs on grade and eliminate square houses or square buildings. And so, but we have to write that into some sort of, design.
again, is it arbitrary? I mean, how can you defend that in a court of law? So that's the questions you have, and my job is to try to not get too crazy, because, you know, there's a lot of things I want, but I can't tell you to paint your house green, and you say, well, I want to paint it red. I go, well, nope, you only can paint it green, and you're gonna go, it's crazy. So where's the lawsuit come up, Brent? What? Yeah, well, yeah, historic districts. And so we have to be real careful on what we do. And like I said, that's why I'm asking y'all if you want the Board of Architectural Review. To me, it's another board that I'd have to watch over.
Well, it's a whole nother set of
And then something that's
regulations that you're going to have to write.
way out of my purview. I mean, it's way out. I know what I like and what I like.
Still past experience, my first inclination is to say that.
And that's your call. I mean, that's like I said, that's gonna be planning, city council. Again, look, you know, now you have the architecture review, now you have to get a certificate of appropriateness. I mean, who's gonna do that? You're gonna say, so it gets convoluted, it gets busy.
Well, you can get even more convoluted than that, because in most European countries, if you want to redo the interior of your house, and you have an architectural review, then you've got to submit your plans for interior renovation.
And the worst part about it, who's gonna comply and enforce with it? You know? I'm gonna pick on Travis for a minute, but I wouldn't want Travis to enforce my architectural review. Because that's not his bailiwick. He's a, you know, up and down, straight over. He doesn't look at something and go, oh, yeah, that's pretty.
Somebody wants a geodesic dome.
Right, yep, no. And now we get to definitions. Again, I think the next 50 or so pages are just definitions. I don't think I see, sorry. No, I didn't see anything here that, would make me say, oh, this is not right.
I don't think we've been hung up about many definition issues.
No, our definitions, I think, are quite good. Again, that's probably why I'm not touching it. I'm not gonna get in definitions and try to define something that, well, saying that, right, here pops up the first one, right? What is a bed and breakfast? And this is where we have to write another ordinance on, I hate to use the word, but it's, VRBO. I mean, short-term stays, that's the best way. So now we have to write something about short-term stays. Who's gonna enforce that?
There is nowhere in here that I see tiny homes.
I did add tiny homes, but back in GR1. Yeah, I'll go back over that. One thing I did add, I'll talk about it right now, I'm sorry. I did add tiny homes to that. Basically sort of comparing it to, mobile homes. Basically saying the same emphasis point is how a mobile home subdivision is built or a mobile home is put, I want them in a area that's gonna be the same size, 2 acres, you cluster them, yeah, paved roads. I don't have a problem with tiny homes. I may live in a tiny home sooner or later, because it just makes sense to me as a utilitarian. Small spaces don't bother me. I wanna get rid of all my junk. So sooner or later, if something happens to Sherry, because I don't think she'd live in a tiny home with me, that's where I end up being,
In a tiny home.
in a tiny home. Or in a mental, no. So I like them. I think and you can go 2 stories high with those things too, so they have a lot of potential. And they don't take up a lot of space, which means you can put a lot of them on there. And typically, if you put them near a commercial area, you can limit, you don't limit it, but the people will limit their driving. They just walk to areas and say, instead of driving to Walmart, there's next to a Dollar General, they go to Dollar General instead and buy everything they need. You don't need a car. Will that happen? There's a lot we gotta think about. Like I said, most of these, simple definitions. I think we're gonna go through this real fast, because there's a lot of definitions. If someone wants to look through that and tell me something they don't like, I have no problem with that. I'll put tiny home in here once they get a definition of tiny home. I just figure out where to put it alphabetically. Well, here's land clearance. We talked about land clearance, right? Land disturbing activity. Land clearance, remove all trees or vegetation from the land surface. You don't see that too much in Easley, the city. Like I said, you see it a lot in counties, because that's where a lot of people make a lot of money. Typically, you see a turnover of pine trees. I think you're looking at 18 years for a tree to come to maturity where you can make money on it. 12?
For the pulp industry, you did the first cutting, I think, 9 to 12 years, and you do another cutting around 18.
Okay,
I
so,
think I'm right with that.
You did once, and then.
Oh, do you?
Before, so I don't remember
all I remember is 20 years ago is 2,000, you could get $2,000 an acre for trees, for pine trees.
So that's Mr. Owens.
All right, so we keep, now, here's something that we talked about, we talk about all the time, is how can we, as a city, use a nonprofit to protect land? Unfortunately, and one of the reasons why you use a nonprofit is because, let's use Brown Drive, for example. It's 100 acres. Now, can we go to them and say, you can't develop? Yeah, we can, but we'll end up in trouble. Can we go to them and say, we'll buy your land from you? And what's gonna happen there is someone on the other side of the city is gonna go, no, you're not gonna spend my tax money on buying that property. It's a waste of my money. And then it's a litigious society, and who knows who's gonna sue you. But if you set a nonprofit up for it,
Are you talking about like Forever Wild or something like that?
a lot of those,
State for-
yeah, Upstate Forever, but a lot of those,
But they want bigger,
they want a huge piece of property or
sensitive.
sensitive piece of property, okay?
You got bunch of arrowheads, they'll talk to you.
But the problem is, once they take it, you still own it. So they don't really take it. So you can't really have the public use it.
Which is how credit.
Well, that, we have to look into that. So what you're looking at, you're saying, we just paid $8 million for a piece of property, or nonprofit did, or whatever it's gonna cost, but nobody gets a benefit out of it. And Upstate Forever is like that. The only people who get the benefit out of it are the people who sell the land, or put their land into a conservation easement. And they still get to use their land. But basically it says, I'll never develop it. So is that what's best for the city? That's why we wanna go to just take a total non-governmental agency, organization out of it, and let them do the work. Or we can say, we believe this is a highly sensitive area, but I don't think the city can go ahead and buy stuff like that when we try to keep a balanced budget. And that's one of the troubles that we see. We want everything, but we don't have enough money to do everything. And so that's why a lot of times you need to have that, go on soapbox, nonprofit. More definitions. We don't see too much light manufacturing in this area. We see very little heavy manufacturing. We do see a lot of litter. And how do we keep a better job of doing that? How do we get more people to do the top row live entertainment, you know? Do we want more of that? Do we want to set up an area for that, or let the private industry take care of that? Definitions of roadways, manufactured housing. This has been real controversial in the city, where we stopped any house. Paul, explain it for me. If you have.
Any mobile home that the power's been off for 90 days in a mobile home park is not allowed anymore, and they can put in a new one that's 5 years less than the year we're in each year.
5 years what?
5 years less, like,
Less
We're
than
in
5
20.
years old.
Correct.
yeah, yeah.
Now, the funny thing about that is we are getting sued about it, so we'll see how that works out.
We have one case, yeah.
Again, some people start to live in house trailers.
But it seems to be working out. I mean, most people, they're moving them out and putting them in, except for, that one.
But yeah, but you have to be able to, like anything, it's enforcement, it's maintenance, enforcement. So, we have a whole mobile home residential district that we have, I think it's in GR1. One of the problems I see with GR1 though is, and I went over this before, is that it's mostly behind City Hall. And there's a lot of residential houses out there, and those people don't have the ability to do duplexes. So we're basically just saying, all you can do back in there is a single-family home. And you're seeing a lot of disrepair. You're seeing a lot of houses fall into disrepair back there. And is it time for these people, that area, to start going ahead? And it's not the people that live there, a lot of times it's just the people who own the houses, they don't care. And it's very difficult to get someone who doesn't care to repair the house. So hopefully with time, we can say that you can do the next book is gonna say GR2 can have the duplexes in there. and I'm looking into if we can do quads, but typically lots are real narrow, so mostly it's just duplexes.
Well, I think that fits in well with, that, the missing middle that we were,
Well-
that Priya St. John was talking about, if we can kind of.
It is missing, and I don't think I live in a duplex, but if I was younger, I would. And the reason I would is I'd buy the duplex myself and rent out to the side, and I would be able to afford a nice, I would be afford to do that and not have to pay much of a mortgage. Because now I got someone helping me pay my mortgage. Like if I was younger, right now I don't need to do it, but if I was younger, I was looking at a four-family house in Massachusetts to buy. You know, I'm looking for anything like that where I could live in one and everyone else pays for it. So we do need, I think we do need to help people that to get there. And I hate to use the word affordable, but affordable housing is one of the only ways to do it is to be able to have a house and rent the house at the same time. If that makes sense, rent the side.
I think that kind of goes back into the conversation on density, accessory dwelling units, short-term rentals. To me, all that's kind of one big idea, and you take a million different versions of it.
What I can't figure out is how to get affordable housing here. Get affordable housing, because you can't define it. And then, you know, you go, well, let's get more lots per acre. You know, and so you go, that'll get the affordable housing, but it doesn't. They just try to get as much a house on there as they can, and a bigger house sometimes. You know, sometimes you see, I'll give an example, over in Hollingsworth area, off of Verdun, they're building houses that probably cost $1 million on the size of a tennis court. So it's not the lot size. So how do you get, and then if you do duplexes, like a gentleman came in the other day and said, I want to do a duplex subdivision. I said, probably don't want to do a duplex subdivision. Are you going to rent them all? He goes, I want to rent them. So do a duplex development. So when he does that, he can get more density out of it. Because he has, instead of getting lots. But what's going to happen in 5 years is one of these big real estate investment trusts is going to come over and just buy them out. So where does the affordable housing go? And he can't, so he's not renting the houses, they're not apartments, but they're, so you just trying to get that, it's tough.
Grateful's doing a density bonus and a couple other things where, say, you get 8 units typically, if you have 1 affordable unit per 4 market rate, then you do 10 or 12, or whatever.
Yeah,
There's an equation involved that allows you to.
I was looking at that, it's who defines the affordability, that's always the biggest question.
I think like 40% of the.
Of the going rate?
Income, and you can go to different banks, you can go to different institutions, and you always get a slightly different definition.
What I worry about that, all right, is that I build 10 duplexes, okay? And then I pick the person who's coming in to buy that low-income one. You know, they meet all the requirements, but it's my nephew, you know? So now he's getting something that for a lot less money. That's what I worry about there. There's always nepotism, remember that. So let's go through, it's not to lose everybody, I'm sorry. Again, definitions. Like I said, there's a lot to look at. And we need to be looking at this. Supposed to look at every 5 years, Pat? Every 5 years to look at this? We need to be looking at it probably every year. See how it's working. There it is. So I did put it in there. Still going to definitions. We're near the end. And I'm going to do this on a different thing, but this is, I explained to someone earlier that apartments, we go, oh, they're GR2 only. But if you look at apartments, and I'm taking some stuff out, putting some stuff, moving some stuff around. But if you look at apartments, let's look at apartments specifically. and I'm gonna make this, a spreadsheet. Apartments, multifamily is a conditional use in GR2. For some reason, we always thought it was just a permitted use. So when someone comes in for a GR2, that gives me some it gives the staff flexibility to say, no, you can't do 14 units per acre. You can do 8 units per acre. You can look at a piece of property and try to get a better number. Well, you may want to do 14 as the max. There are certain areas that you say, yeah, let's do 14. If it's in a highly commercialized area or highly busy road, you may say, well, no one's going to build a house there, so let's make it a dense apartment unit. So, but there's all conditional permitted uses, and it goes through this whole thing.
But you're not chasing condos yet, are you?
I don't think we have condos in here. I haven't seen condos.
I've never seen
I'm not sure why. I'll have to look at the definition. I think condo is multi-level. No. When you do a condo, it's multi-level, and I think we want to stay away from that as a condo. That's why I don't think we see condo in there. I'm not sure why condo's not in here. Yeah, condo can be, but typically, when the definition of condo is not, yeah, basically apartment complex can sell the units, so. And we go through all this, and you see, some of these, I just took all these residential uses out of the commercial uses, other than downtown, where you can have an attached apartment downtown. I just felt that the land, it's nice to have an apartment above your building, but I think just to have a total unit of apartments is just, in the core commercial, it just doesn't make sense. You want core commercial, be commercial. I want,
Condominium may be the only way we can end up with affordable housing ownership.
was that,
Condominium may end up being the only way they have affordable housing ownership.
maybe. But typically you'll see the same thing happen. You're gonna see the same thing happening with everything right now. We're talking about affordable, but what's happening is that people are building developments for total sale, total lease. They don't care about selling a unit out there, they sell all the units. If you have a 50-unit duplex development, they're selling all 50 units to one person, and that one person's just leasing them out. That's what we're seeing nowadays.
The spreadsheet shows the conditional C that you marked out on the GR2 of the text.
Right, it doesn't, yeah.
It
But-
says under permitted.
Right, it says permitted, you can do it, right. But then I was reading through this and I said, well, and that's what I want to say, this is this is what I think dictates. That's what I looked at it. Because I looked at that and said, well, wait a second. Everyone's saying you can do it, but yes, it's conditional. It's weird. It's weird how it's written. It's really weird how it's written. Yeah, you can do.
The spreadsheet version supersedes.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Because now it has specifically states it's a conditional use. Well, the other one doesn't say it's a permitted use, it just says it's a use. Does it say permitted?
It does, yeah. There's a couple of that as conditional uses.
Yeah, well, it's,
I mean, that's probably just a,
yeah, that's where I'm the definer.
yeah.
202, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will have, what I want you to do now is I'm gonna go ahead and rewrite this. Put the draft on the website, so you won't see the red markings anymore. There'll still be the red marked one, there'll still be that draft. I may put both on there. So I'll put the red line mark up there, and then I'll put the draft as a full draft. And then, I gotta figure out which way I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna either I'll probably do the public hearing first. But I don't know. I gotta dig into it to see which way I'm gonna go. Either go to city council first or public hearing first. I'm just trying to weigh that out. And I may go to, I have to think about that. So I may go one way or the other. I'm not sure which way yet. But there will be another meeting next month, this time. One way or the other. All right? Feel free to give me a call. And next